we find that most of the normal range in which the tiger used to be found, let's say about 50 years ago or 100 years ago, have completely been depleted. And it is only India that we have this species. So I think IUCN has declared it as a endangered species. In 69, there was a meeting of IUCN General Assembly in the Vigyan Bhavan, where this issue of tiger endangered species was raised in a big way. And it was 69, and afterwards it was in 72 that Mr. Sankla, who was then one of the conservators, was asked to really prepare a tiger project. And at that time, I was the secretary of the National Committee on Environmental Planning, and we really vetted this project and we presented this project to the cabinet at that time so that this project can be taken up. To begin with, it was in the Ministry of Agriculture, but subsequently now it happens to be in the Ministry of Environment. The tiger conservation is so important that it is actually a very, very, I should say, iconic species, as you have rightly said. And if we ensure tiger conservation, we ensure conservation of many other species, which we have to really conserve. So I think taking tiger as the umbrella species, we have ensured conservation of the ungulates, we have ensured conservation of the small animals, we have ensured conservation of the pollinators, and we have ensured conservation of water, we have ensured conservation of the soil. So I think the whole gamut of activities gets related with the tiger conservation. So I think it is something like a very good leverage for creating an environment where this species, which is still having a lot of challenges, about which I can just flag you, that tiger is in danger because of the illegal poaching that is taking place. Because large number of people world over take it as a pride to really possess trophies of the tiger. For example, from nail, from tooth, from skin, and all kinds of things. And in fact, every part of the tiger has a market value. And the market, the gray market for this, or the illegal market for this, is very large. And there is a global demand. And I think we are having a serious problem in protecting the tiger. And at the same time, a new problem has come that there is a human and tiger conflict, which is becoming increasingly large because the tiger population has grown and habitats are shrinking, so that they are really wandering and really having a parole in the human habitation where there is a problem. So I think we are having a challenge, but I think it's a great, great news that we have been able to increase the tiger population to really 3,000, around 3,000. And we have got a large tiger area under tiger project, which are 15 number. I think there is one more added. So now total we have 51. But this census relates only to the 50 tiger reserves, which were there until, and the most important point is, which is a globally, and for which it has entered into Guinness Book record, that it is the first time the tiger census has been carried out using such a large number of camera traps. And thousands of photographs have been analyzed. And each tiger can be identified by the characteristic strips that it has. So each tiger can be labeled and each tiger can be counted. And I think that's a great thing.
Absolutely. So the stripes are like our fingerprints, and that's how we can, identify and we can label them, is what you're suggesting. All right. I'd like to take up what are some of the other challenges as well a little later on in the program. But let's just focus on what has been the success story and why have we seen this kind of success in the first part. Kalyan, let me come across to you now. You too have been observing this wild cat from very close quarters. You photographed them, you videographed them as well. What is it that you've seen that has changed over the last 6 years or last 7-8 years, between 2014 and 19, where we saw an incremental rise in the number of tigers?
Right. Thanks. It's great to be here on the show. So I have been following tigers for close to 20 years now. And me as a photographer, tiger is not an easy animal to catch. You have to spend hours and days sometimes to even get a glimpse of it. And myself have seen, I'm from Bangalore. I used to go to Kabini a lot, Bandipur and Kabini. And I still remember, if you go every day, morning, evening safari, maybe once a week you would see a tiger, But now in 2020, if you go on a safari, in each safari, you probably come back seeing 2-3 tigers, So I've had direct evidence I've seen of how these tiger numbers have bounced back. Of course, there are many reasons. It's not just tiger numbers going up. As Mr. Ashok had pointed out, ecotourism plays a big role, because of which tigers are also getting habituated to people. Like before, they're extremely shy. But because of seeing vehicles, because of seeing tourists, they're also getting a lot more habituated. A lot more tourists are seeing it, and it is a pride. It's our national animal, right? So because of which, I think the tiger numbers really gone up. But I mean, of course, we'll discuss the challenges there. I mean, it's still not all happy news. One of the things, of course, we need to see from the report, yesterday's report, was that 3 tiger reserves don't have any tigers anymore, apparently. So I think it's not all happy news, but for now, I think we can congratulate ourselves. But it's just a long journey. It's we're not there at the destination yet.
Okay, it's a long journey. There's still a lot more to go. Let's now, in our second segment, focus on what needs to be done really as far as addressing some of these challenges are concerned. Let's first identify the challenges, Mr. Pai.
Yes, the 50 reserves or the 51st which has been created in isolation, the tiger reserves may not succeed in the long run to conserve the species, for the simple reason that there have to be corridors where the gene pool exchange has to take place, and the species can become viable. Though that is the first thing, that there has to be corridors between the tiger reserves and the populations, so that they can freely move and the gene exchange takes place. To that happen, there are issues dealing with the people, and also with regard to the development. Now, the fragmentation of habitats has been one of the major reasons for increasing conflict between man and the wild animal, as well as decrease in certain species or decrease in biodiversity. So the establishment of corridors and dealing with the people which has to be a part of the entire conservation program. Conservation alone and the protection of the species alone cannot happen without the social upliftment of the communities and the people living in and around who are having a subsistence livelihood. So that has to be part of that one, that where it is not that there are one needs to invest huge sums of money for that purpose, because there are already ongoing schemes of governments, central government and the state governments, which deals from every aspect of the human, the community's life or the human life, and that can be used to dovetail the benefit to these communities, so that their dependence on the tiger reserves or the forest get reduced to great extent. They have other better economic opportunities, and at the same time, whoever has some amount of dependency, they become a close partners or collaborators in the development of the entire model of conservation and social upliftment of these communities. The other thing is that when we are talking about the conservation of wild animals, we have to remember that it is the ecosystem which is getting conserved or restored, and more importantly, the scarce freshwater sources. Most of the tiger reserves, if you look at the physiography, they happen to be the watersheds of many of the rivers and the streams. So they are the important sources of water, which again help the downstream communities across the country, and that is the reason that there is the investment has to take place in a manner which is supplemental to both the aspects of livelihood as well as the conservation of the species.
Okay, all right, Professor. As far as this particular point that Mr. Pai is making, I want to take that forward now. The aspirations of the people because of which we've seen large-scale development, irrigation projects, roadways, railways, and so on and so forth. Can development and the environment or the ecosystem coexist and go hand in hand? And what needs to be done?
I think you are right that these linear developments, such as railroads and road network, they are one of the very serious issues in respect of creating a conservation ethos and conservation, I should say, scenario and the protected environment for the wildlife animal. You will be surprised to know that the real original habitat of the tiger in the country is very, very small. It is the buffer zone that we have added, and it is the protection that we have provided, which has really helped it. Otherwise, the core zone of the area in these are very, very small. And the original forest is actually the original habitat is only a very fraction of the total area under the tiger projects collectively. So I think here is a challenge. The other point that I want to make is that what you are saying is correct. Can the development and tiger conservation, or for that matter, conservation, go hand in hand? Yes, they can go hand in hand, provided we plan our development and our future plans in a manner where we really incorporate these issues systematically. But unfortunately, in the past, as well as the present trend is where these issues are only taken as a afterthought, and it is here that the problem comes, and therefore otherwise the tunnels can be made where actually you are passing through a tiger area. And the more important thing is that although we have got large number of tiger reserves, but their interconnectivity is very poor. Some are connected, and unless they remain connected and these isolated populations have an occasion to mix together, as Mr. Pai was saying, you see the inbreeding of the tiger, or for that matter, any animal, is a very, very damaging for the species to survive. So in order to really have a long-term tiger protection, these have to be connected. There is another important point which has come out from our survey, that it is only in the north and some in the south where the tiger population is reasonably increased. But there are many other areas, northeast as well as others, where the tiger population has not increased. In fact, in some places, it has just not there. There has been attempt made to really translocate the tiger and also achieve this so that where the tiger population has been depleted, we can rebuild the tiger population. And Panna Tiger Reserve is one such area where this has been achieved very successfully. In fact, I will say some of the best experts of the world for the tiger management and transportation of the tiger to the new habitat for rehabilitation are in the country. So I think some of the best tiger experts or the large cat experts are available in the country. And the only point is that we have to really protect it.
Kalyan, so, you said you've been looking at tigers, you've been following tigers and photographing tigers for the last 20 odd years. In the recent years, what is it that you found that has been troubling or worrying, any troubling or worrying signs that you have witnessed?
I think I agree with a lot of the other panelists. I think this is a great success story. In fact, I believe that with India with 1.3 billion people, the fact that we managed to double the tiger numbers in the last decade and a half, I think it's a cause for celebration. But like what other panelists have pointed out, I think we're halfway there. Because you look at many things. One is linear intrusions. You have which are cutting tiger corridors. Like from my travel, I'm not a scientific expert, but for example, I've seen specific tiger reserves where there are more tigers than that national park can handle. And what that happens is that when a new tiger comes into the park, an old tiger has to move out, and that usually moves out to a nearby village, which becomes human-wildlife conflict. It eventually has to be captured and put somewhere else. If these forests are connected, then naturally, I think these tigers can move. So one of the good examples for that is Central India, Pench, Kanha corridor, where there is national highway that passes by in the middle. It's a very good corridor area. It supports all the Central Indian forests. But the government was able to intervene. They had to spend few extra 100 crores. but they managed to build a huge elevated, so the animals can move. It's a big flyover where the national highway through it is not going to disrupt the tigers. So I really think 20 years ago, I think things like poaching and other things were a big issue. But these days, I think the primary issue is fragmentation of the forest. And land. We also have to note, recently there is this new EIA notification which the government has proposed, where it makes it easier for companies to get permissions to do things in forest areas much more easier than before. In fact, if anything, I think we should be strengthening the EIA process so that this kind of thing does not happen in the future. But one thing again I want to add, talking about Karnataka, there's a famous scientist called Ullaskar, and many of you know he's probably one of the world expert on tigers. And he's done extensive camera trapping. And what is found is a tiger that was photographed was found in the Anteli again. It has traveled over 350 kilometers from it crossed 3 national parks and ended there. So it's almost moved from Bangalore to Goa. So it's quite fascinating because it's only because of those contiguous corridors that we can expect tiger numbers to go up further. I really don't know. Can we achieve 4,000 10 years from now? I don't know, unless we take drastic precautions.
Okay. Time now to get concluding remarks from all my panelists with the best way forward. I've got 3 minutes left in the program, so in 1 minute each, the best way forward, starting first with you, Mr. Pai.
Voluntary relocation of the communities or the villages inside these tiger reserves and along the corridors, and ensure that the social justice is done along with the conservation of the tiger and the whole web of life associated with that one is the way forward. And this is not an easy task, but it can be done given the plethora of developmental schemes which are available with the government and the funds used to be there in the initial stages of the wildlife conservation. Nowadays, the aspect of life is there is a governmental scheme to support the people so that they can be weaned away from the dependency on the forest completely and something which is more sustainable in the long run for them and their welfare. But yes, the effort has to be through the voluntary or involving the people, taking their taking them into confidence and convincing them the better way of life exists there. And our entire developmental administration has to be slightly reoriented, especially when we are dealing with the wildlife habitats or the biodiversity hotspots, and to take measures which would not come in the way of fragmentation, which would fragment the habitats, rather facilitate the freer gene pool exchanges, and not only of the tigers, all other species of life in our country. And the way forward, the conservation with social justice is the way forward. I strongly, and that's I watch for.
Okay, Professor.
I think that the tiger conservation so far has been very nice and very, I should say, satisfactory and successful. And it's a global example of really providing this kind of protection to the tiger. But I think now the time has come that it has to be a futuristic, because the climate change is one of the very dominant factor which is going to really matter, both in terms of the animals as well as for the tiger. Because the northward movement and the upward movement because of the climate change is a very dominating factor. We find that the animals as well as the plants are really shifting their range. And in case of tiger, I would like to really flag this issue that tigers were never found to be present in Sikkim, at least in high altitude, where we have got the snow leopard. And now we have been evidence of the camera trap that the tiger is now sighted there. So we can see that the future has to be there. So the tiger conservation program have now to be made more dynamic in terms of the futuristic problems and futuristic constraints that we are likely to expect because of the climate change. We cannot wish away climate change. It is going to be a part of our really experience of the future. and it is going to be something which is not only going to affect human being but wildlife far more seriously, and the wild animal and plants even more seriously. So I think this kind of an element has to be added. And the other thing that I would like to say, that tiger need to be kept in jungles and not in history. So we have to really all the time keep on changing our strategy, and we have to really align ourselves with the new challenges and with the new reality. And the most important part is that we have to now shift our emphasis from tiger reserve area to really the network of tiger reserves, which is from length and breadth of the country, which is going to be very challenging because of the various factors, because of the developmental issues, and because of the linear development that is going to take place in the country in a big way.
Sure.
So I think these are something which are going to be very, very important.
And Kalyan, close the show for us with your concluding remark.
Thank you. First of all, I really think we need to acknowledge the work of Indian Forest Department, Forest Service. I think it's only because of them, irrespective of which politics or politician, they're the ones who kept up forests and continue to manage to get the tigers numbers where they are. But what I just want to point out is that we are having this conversation during COVID time, and we know for the fact that the virus originated because of destruction of forests. That right? So I think we need to, as we move forward from here, I really think that both our governments, international governments, forests, everybody, together be more sensible about how we do development and keep environment in mind. And tiger is a great flagship species to use that as a model to save rest of the environment.
Okay, all right. On that note, then I'll call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. What's coming out of this discussion is that several steps have been taken to protect and save tigers, better use of technology, relocation of forest dwellers in tiger reserves or on the buffer zones, working with the local population, providing for compensation are some of the measures that have helped that the tiger numbers have more than doubled over the last 6 or 7 years, is what the panelists are suggesting. The situation, however, is dynamic, and we have to keep on evolving and ensuring that we have better sustainable processes in the years to come. Efforts have to be futuristic, considering the